Now, it's the evening show, and what a better way to start the week than by looking at the stars. Let's reach for the stars, get things off to a start. As always, we have David Moore here from Astronomy Ireland. David, starting the week, a lot happening in the sky and a lot happening in Astronomy Ireland. But let's just start by talking about this American desire to find water on the moon. I mean, how realistic is this?
Well, George Bush directed NASA during his term of office to get back to the moon by about 2020, with people, that is. We've had lots of missions going to the moon, and ultimately put a man on Mars by 2030. And one of the big problems with that is getting the resources up to astronauts, especially if you're eventually going to establish long-term bases.
Could I just ask you something about the moon? John F. Kennedy said this in like 1960, 61, and by 69 they were on the moon, using technology which would probably there'd be more technology in my watch now, right? In theory,
certainly
right?
Computer technology,
Now, the capability is there, and I would have thought very simply there, to move to the moon very, very quickly. Why would it take till 2020?
The real reason is money. The Apollo missions were fantastic for the science, for the engineering, for the American economy, because it kick-started a whole revolution of miniaturizing the electronics. I mean, what did the Americans get out of the trips to the moon, apart from beating the Russians? A few rocks, but also they got Silicon Valley. They got the whole microelectronics industry, and that's one of the huge spin-offs we're all reaping the benefits today. So back then they spent, in today's money, over $100 billion on the project. NASA's budget is less than a fifth of that at the moment. So they can't allocate 5 whole years of their
by the way, which
budget.
is half of our GDP when you think of it, there you go.
So it's a very expensive prospect to go to the moon. Now, we could do it a bit cheaper these days, and there was only a few billion dollars allocated to this mission to go to the moon, on top of everything else that NASA is supposed to be doing. So it's going to be a more gradual process, and it's the reason for the 1960s and 70s moon shots were all political. It was a race with the Soviet Union at the time. Now it's more, mankind ultimately is going to reach out into the stars. It's very early days yet. Try to think of the exploration of the Americas after Columbus just found America in 1492. It was a very slow process before really the American economy was anyway significant in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I suppose the point I'm making is if we can mass produce things like cars and so on these days, I know it's an expensive process, but relative to how expensive it was 30 years ago, surely they should be able to put almost a commuting vehicle between here and the moon.
And that's what they're doing. The new Ares rocket that NASA is developing, the new spacecraft that's going to replace the space shuttle. After next year, the space shuttle is gone. It's being mothballed. It's only needed to finish building the International Space Station. So, yes, you could do it, but the problem is money. Especially as we're now going into a recession, it's going to cost billions to do this, probably tens of billions ultimately, to have manned bases on the moon, and there isn't that much money floating around in that kind of community. So it's a bit of a prestige thing, as in the Chinese are expected to go to the moon as well. The Indians are developing a space program, and we Europeans will probably piggyback with the Americans.
Okay, and you don't need anyone's permission to go there, which is great, I suppose.
There are some United Nations treaties about the use of space and who owns what out there in space. And of course, there are very few people out there, and it being really just a research mission at the moment, there's not that much fear about it. But it'd probably be a bit like the Antarctic and the way that that area has been developed. Okay. Tourists can't go there, but government scientists can.
Let's talk about Saturn. One of the few stories this year, bar the 30-year anniversary of the moon landing, to break through to mainstream media over the past few weeks was this extra ring or new ring around Saturn. And it really, it was right up there in the news stories. I don't think people really understand the significance of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was important scientifically, and the reason is that those of us who looked at Saturn, and we set up telescopes to show people the planet Saturn in the past, we'll be doing so again next year when it comes back. Right now it's too close to the sun. You have to get up at 6 a.m. to see Saturn, so not much public interest in it that way. But when you see Saturn, there are several moons that you can see in a telescope. One of them, found very early on when the first telescopes were pointed at Saturn, was very weird indeed. When it was on one side of Saturn it was bright, on the other side it was dark. When spacecraft got up close, you found it was like as white as a cue ball on one side and jet black on the other.
Why is that?
Well, it's because of this ring. It turns out that another moon, a bit further out, must have been hit by something, and all the debris that was blasted off its surface has spread around Saturn in a huge ring. And there's an inner moon that's been sweeping up this material on its leading face. And it's very dark material, so it's turned black as a result. And that was what a lot of people thought, but NASA have an infrared telescope called Spitzer that can see in light that our eyes can't see in, but can pick up this dust, because although it's pretty cold by everyday standards, it's actually glowing in infrared. So the pictures show this huge torus sweeping around Saturn like a giant donut, 8 million kilometres across. Now remember, it's less than 500,000 kilometres to our moon. So this is a huge object. It is very tenuous. You could fly through it very easily. In fact, spacecraft have, much thinner than clouds we have in the sky. But there's a lot of material there in total, and it's only just been seen, this 8 million kilometre wide object.
Okay, let's come back from outer space and back to what's happening here in Ireland. What have you got on your own programme, the programme of events coming up shortly? Okay,
we have two aspects to it. One is physical events that are happening around the country, and the other one then is events that you can see in the sky. And the big events, we have most of our evening classes now for this season are up and running, but there are still some running in Sligo, Tralee and other places around the country that haven't yet started.
That's astronomy.ie for more information.
Astronomy.ie for all those events. On November the 9th, we have a big public lecture about the Big Bang. So everything you want to know about the creation of the universe. And that's being held in Trinity College in Dublin. But for people who can't get to Dublin, it'll be put on DVD, and you can order the DVD, same way you can get a ticket for the lecture. You get more details again on our website.
Very good.
And then the other events happening in the sky is that, of course, the planet Jupiter is still blazing away in the south. A fantastic
It's so obvious.
sight.
I mean, I do, and I'm an absolute Philistine when it comes to this stuff, but if you look anywhere in the sky, this thing just shoots out at you. It really is bright, isn't it?
Yeah, and it will be for the next few months. It's the brightest star-like object in the sky, and if you look around for the next brightest one, it's about 5 to 10 times brighter than the brightest real star in the sky. So it's absolutely unmistakable, hovering fairly high up in the south. And on the Thursday, Friday and Saturday, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, as part of the International Year of Astronomy, we'll be setting up telescopes in several of our branches all around the country. I'll be at the one at Phoenix Park in Dublin, 8 o'clock, and we'll be showing Jupiter to people in particular, and a few other things as well.
Of course, it's all about going to your website. That's what the information is, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a free mailing list you can sign up for there and become a friend of Astronomy Ireland. There's 15,000 people subscribed at the moment. If you want to take it a bit further, we have a magazine called Astronomy in Space. That tells you everything about what's happening in the sky, all the latest pictures from the moon, from Saturn, they'll all be in there. That comes out every month. That will cost you this, with the International Year of Astronomy, there's a special offer on for 74 cents a week.
My God, that's for nothing. Yeah, and that's all at astronomy.ie. Of course,
That's
you don't need to be a
astronomy.ie.
geek to be into astronomy. I mean,
No.
loads of people are, you know.
Astronomy Ireland is really a group for the general public. It's relative to population, it's the biggest in the world, therefore possibly in the universe. And it's aimed at the general public. So if you find any of this interesting, if you're fascinated by what's out there, be it looking through a telescope, learning about the Big Bang, and all points in between, then Astronomy Ireland is the group we set up for you.
Okay. Dave, thanks very much for being with us. Don't forget, you can go to that website for more information, astronomy.ie. Well worth accessing just to get information about astronomy and also to find out about all those events that are happening, including free events all around the country and what you can see in the sky at this time of year, astronomy.ie. Okay, stay with us. We've more